Narcissism. Jodi, let me get this straight. You were not in one but two narcissistic relationships. Is that right?
That's correct.
Welcome, everybody. We'll be right back with Jodi's full story, and we're going to learn about an incredible book she wrote that talks about narcissism. We'll see you in a moment. Welcome back, everybody. I want you to tune in. I want you to share this. Narcissism is a word that is super popular right now. Bad relationships. I have conversations frequently and people talking about their relationships. I want you to give a warm welcome to Jodi Pavlock here. Jodi, welcome to the program.
Yes, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
I want to share a little bit about you, but I'll tell you, first of all, I want to really just say congratulations for writing this book, because it takes courage to do something like this. It takes courage to take a stand and to make people aware of what's out there. So first of all, I applaud you for that.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. I do.
And I just want to let people know, if you're tuning in for the first time and you're just finding out about Jodi for the first time, she's a model, actress, real estate investor, and former bus driver. I absolutely love that. It's such a diverse background, and I'm sure you have a lot of stories to tell about that. But for today, you wrote a book called Jekyll Can't Hyde, highlighting your story, two stories of dealing with narcissistic abuse. And I want to turn it over to you, because I hear this word constantly. I think people hear this word a lot now, and maybe they're struggling for meaning, and they might even find themselves in a situation right now. So I know today is going to lend a lot of perspective on what Jodi's going to share. So I encourage you to share this video, even with a friend, and let's get into it. So Jodi, what brought you here? When did you realize this word and how it was impacting your life and your relationships?
Well, it basically started when I was with my ex-husband. Everything was fine in the beginning. After a while, things started to take a turn for the worse. And then I started researching the word narcissism, and I figured, he has a lot of characteristics. He wasn't, quote unquote, the worst narcissist, but he definitely had a lot of the bullet points they have. So we wound up separating. I got divorced, healed from that pretty much. But when I got involved with my ex, who was the main star of the book, Jekyll Can't Hyde, my ex doesn't even hold a candle to what I went through with that ex. There are many forms of narcissism. There's an overt, there's a covert, which is my ex, the one the book was based off of. And they just have a lot of characteristics. They do love bombing. Then there's the devaluation stage. Then it's the idealization again. And it's the put downs and gaslighting. There's cognitive dissonance. There's so many words. And then one of the biggest words that a lot of people don't understand, which I came to, live through, unfortunately, is trauma bonding. And basically, in layman's terms, it's when you're basically chemically addicted to the person. So your body gets addicted to the highs and the lows of the relationship, the dopamine effects, and then the lows. Yeah. Wow. So even though most, people that are in relationships like me, I truly was in love with my ex. At one point, I considered him the love of my life. But, when you actually take a step outside of it, and thankfully I wasn't one of those people who kept it all inside. I really confided in my close friends, especially my best friend, Peggy. And, they had to kind of bring me back to reality, because when you're gaslit on a daily basis, they deny your reality. I can't explain to you in words. It's very hard to put together unless somebody else was in an abusive relationship, but it's like it's like a fog gets lifted off. You see what they're doing, but you're like, I can't believe they're actually doing this. There's so many ways of manipulation.
That's a great word. You almost
Yes.
lose clarity. And by the way, I just want to point out, wasn't Peggy the
Mhm.
reason why you wrote this book? Your friend Peggy?
Yeah, I dedicated the book to her because she
Right.
was my biggest helping hand, pulling me out of basically a black hole.
Yeah,
Really.
I wanted to draw attention to that because I think it's so important to have somebody. And so shout out to Peggy for supporting
Yes,
you and encouraging you to write the book, because
absolutely.
it's difficult to go through a journey like this alone. So I think maybe
Yes.
that's the first thing, that if you're not sure, if you're in a relationship like this, maybe you need to find somebody to confide in. And we're going
Yes.
to tell you how you can get the book here in a moment. But I want to go back to your
Uh-huh.
story, because I can imagine in your first relationship, you probably didn't know what was going on. And so when did you really realize that, wait, like there had to be a moment where you probably were questioning yourself. You were like, is something wrong with me? And then there had to be a moment where you went, wait a second, this is actually what's going on. And then you had to kind of step out of that story. Do you remember that transition?
Yeah, I mean, it was like a little bit of the same, but then a little bit of different with both relationships. But with my ex-husband, it was mostly everything changed after the marriage. It was very controlling with the money. On my honeymoon, I wasn't allowed to call my mother to let her know that I landed safely. Just
Okay.
ludicrous stuff. I had to go in the bathroom and sneak away and say, Mom, I'm here, okay? I'm like, this is not normal.
Wow.
I get you're on a honeymoon, but my mom, is like my life. I'm an only child, so any mother would want to know their kid's okay. Just craziness like that. And then it just would be, controlling at the grocery store. I'm not allowed to buy, 2 boxes of cereal, and then, would put me down because I don't make quote unquote enough money. Just little
wow,
things
okay.
like that. Yeah. So then I eventually said, you know what? It's hard to say. You can mentally prepare yourself as much as you can to leave, but until you actually do it, it's like, it's like they say, you don't realize until you take that jump. It happened differently with both relationships, but once I set my mind to something, I commit to it. So when I said, okay, I'm leaving, I filed for divorce that morning, and that was it.
And that's your courage coming through. And I know there's people that
Mhm.
are going to see this video that may feel like they are not ready to do that. What would you say to that person who might be, what do I do? Like you talked about the trauma bond. I mean, there's a
Yeah.
biochemical thing happening, and that can be really difficult to break free from, but you clearly were able to do that. Like, what was there a moment that you remember that you said, that's it, I'm done?
Yeah, I mean, with my second ex, the one that I based the book off mostly, it was finding out he was having an affair again for the second time. And when
For
I
the
found
second
out,
time.
right away, I called Peggy. She consoled me, of course, always there for me,
Yeah.
because she lives in Florida. So I called her and I bawled my eyes out and I said, I literally can't do this anymore. I'm
Mm.
not going to. I refuse to. So she's like, just block him. That's it. Just block him out of your life. And that, to me, is the most important thing. I mean, it was easier for me because, we weren't married yet. We didn't have children. We didn't have any quote unquote ties together.
Right.
So I could just block him. So it was
Okay.
easier for me to do it that way. I know other women have different situations, where they have children or they're still living with them. I would say go minimal contact. But for me, the most important thing was mentally preparing yourself. And a
Mentally
lot of
preparing.
times you can think you're ready, but until you do it, you're still going to be scared. You're still going to have your ups and downs. I mean,
Yeah.
I left him like going on 8, 9 months ago. I'm in such a better place now. Everybody says, I get my spark back. Thank you.
Good.
Yeah, but I'm
I
mature.
just want to pause for one moment.
Mhm.
If you're listening live, I want you to throw something in the comment. If you have a question or a comment, we're live here. Well, you might be getting this on the playback, but right now, as I'm talking, we're
Sure.
live. And we're with Jodi Pavlock, who wrote a book, Jekyll Can't Hyde, detailing her incredible experience. I say incredible because I know there was a lot of ups and downs about going through narcissistic abuse.
Yes.
And I want to let you finish your thought there. And I have
Sure.
a question for you, which I think is
Mhm.
going to be pertinent for a lot of people listening. So,
Absolutely. Yes. Oh, so what I was saying is you just have to mentally prepare yourself as much as you can. But I like to be realistic, and I pointed out in the book, you're not going to just leave your abuser and run off into the sunshine and say, oh, I'm going to lose 20 pounds in a day and my life is going to be 100% better. It's going to get better, but it's going to take work like everything else in life. You need to go to therapy. You need to have a good support system of friends and family. I'm blessed to have an army of people behind me that call me every day. If I get less than 30 phone calls a day, that's a slow day. So I have a
wow,
lot. Yes.
you got a
I have a
tribe
lot of,
behind you. Wow, that's
yes,
awesome.
yes.
That's
I'm
great.
quite popular, which is good. I have a great group of friends.
It's important.
Um, yes, it really is. And I really, my heart pours out for the people who don't have a unit, that don't have family, don't have friends. They still can do it. It's just going to be a little harder. So just be prepared. But thankfully, I had family and friends that knew what I was going through. They stick by me. They keep me safe, and they just, they want to see me thrive, which I am now because I got rid of the toxicity out of my life.
That's great news. We're going
Yeah.
to get more into the story. I want to let you know that Jodi is going to be visiting us here in Pensacola, New Jersey at the Soundplex, where we have an event called AIR, Authenticity, Inspiration, and Relationships. It's on February 1st. That's a Saturday. We're going to go from 1 to 6. Jodi's going to be one of the interviews happening. We're going to have an agenda here soon, but we're excited to have you come down and share. This is a hot topic. It takes
Yes.
a lot of courage to put something like this out there because you're being vulnerable. And I know you left the names out because that was the right thing to do. Just leave the
Yes.
names out. There's no calling out here. This is more about just detailing the story for the reader so that they can learn through your story. And I think you've successfully done that. And I can only imagine as your book gets out there more and more. So we'll put the link in for the event, and you're free to share this video now. I see Joe is on LinkedIn. Hey, Joe, how are you doing? Glad you're joining us. Joe's got an incredible story too. We'll be learning more about him.
Okay,
And
great.
if you're listening live, please feel free to
Mhm.
type in a comment. If you know Jodi, if you don't know her, if you have a question, please throw that in. We'd like to highlight your comment as we move forward. I do have a question for you,
Sure.
unscripted.
Mhm.
How do you not repeat? Because you had your marriage, and then
Mhm.
you said the second person was worse, right?
Oh,
I
yeah.
say worse, had more of the characteristics
Yes.
and was a covert, I think you said.
Mhm.
So how do you coach somebody or tell somebody, uh, like, how do they avoid repeating that? So
Um,
they don't have to
from
go through it a second time.
Yes, no, from my own experience, now again, when you step out of the box and you look back, there were red flags, that I avoided, that I just made excuses for. And when you're an empath like me, you're a people pleaser. You try to see the best in people. You try to give them the benefit of the doubt. And with that particular ex, there was always a lot of quote unquote rumors or commentary about who he was and how he was. But again, I thought that was his past when he was like in his 20s, because usually most people grow up and they grow out of womanizing phases and, drugs and alcohol, whatnot. I mean, I never
Yeah.
divulged in that stuff. I'll be honest. The only thing I like to do is gamble. I'm an easy girl. But, again, I don't judge. That's one very important thing about me. Everybody has a past, a history. We all have flaws. We all have things that make us us, and nobody should be judged or made fun of. So that was one of the things I thought. And I knew him from years ago, and he was thought to be an all-around great guy, but that's what narcissists like to portray, especially on social media. They like to say, I help the homeless, look at me, all that kind of stuff. But then when, as they say, when you live with somebody, and as my stepfather always says, tell me in 5 years how it is.
Mm.
That's when the truth tells. But to me now, I go more by my intuition, which is strong. My mom has a very strong intuition. I got that from her, and it definitely heightened after I left him. But if something doesn't sit right with me, it's just like it's a hard no for me. And it's not being harsh or mean because I'm the sweetest, nicest person ever. But it's like at this age, if you can't come at me correct, don't come at me at all. So, we
Right.
should all have proper manners at this age. We should all know how to act and respect one another. So, I mean,
And,
those are the biggest things,
and not apologize for your boundaries.
Exactly. Very important.
You're allowed to have boundaries. You're allowed to
Yeah.
set your boundaries up and then be aware when someone's crossing them.
Yes.
And make your decision what's best for you. And you hit on something too, and we're going to do a quick little exercise for everybody. We just started adding this, but how would somebody know initially, like, is there signs that somebody could look for in the very beginning? So that, like, I know there's all these different characteristics, and you talked about the 9, and I know you're going to be going into that at the event on February 1st. But what would you say? Is there an early indicator that would be prevalent?
Yeah, I mean, one of the main characteristics, I really didn't have this with the second ex, so that's what kind of threw me off a little bit, is the love bombing phase, they call it, is when they excessively have admiration for you, gifts, wanting to spend a lot of time with you. It's like a little bit overly done. It's like a little too much.
Too fast.
So, yes, a little too fast. I mean, there's liking somebody, but then it's like really pushing the grain. See, I didn't have that with that particular ex. It was very slow because I wasn't looking for a relationship then. I was going through my divorce. But again, as I depict in the book, I was just going through life, and I knew him from years ago. So we were just talking. It was very slow for months. So I didn't think anything of it. I was just getting to know him, when I was ready. But for an average person getting with a narcissist, usually that's how they start off, very strong. A lot of future faking, which is a big term that they use, promises of marriage and moving in and, vacations like 2 days after you meet, or saying I love you like a week later. I mean, those are really big red flags.
And maybe when we're at the live event, you could talk more about that people pleasing, because I think there's something with that. So, but for right now, I just want to pull up TJ saying, and maybe you can speak to this. It is important to specify that not every abuser is a narcissist. What do you think about when you read that?
That is true. That is true. But in my specific case, I was dealing with 2 narcissists. I mean, there's more of a psychological abuser. There's more domestic abuse. But just in my specific situation, that's what I dealt with personally. And that's what I can resonate with.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you for joining us. Do you have any final comments before we close everybody out? And I want to tell you how to connect with Jodi and the event. But is there any final word that you would like to say?
Yeah, basically my final words is, I wrote the book. I'll be honest, I was a little scared when I first did it, because I was like, oh, is this the right thing to do? I was nervous about, repercussions, let's say. But I was very careful how I wrote it, where I wrote it. And I basically wanted to just get the message out. It's something that is not talked about often enough. I know physical abuse is worse, in a sense, but psychological abuse, those are scars that are permanent that you can't see on the brain, unfortunately.
Yes.
And if I can just help one woman get out of that kind of situation, I feel like mission accomplished, because I know how it feels to be in that deep, dark space where you feel like you're being swallowed by the ocean and you're drowning and you just don't know what to do and how to get out of it. And thankfully, I had my team of people to help me. And I want to do that for somebody else. And that would just make me overly happy.
So I want to say that you are doing that. A lot of times we don't realize you are doing it. So applaud you for that. And I want to let everybody know, we're so glad that you joined us. If you're on the playback, February 1st, Jodi's going to be in Pensacola, New Jersey with me at the Soundplex. I'm going to be, she's going to talk to the audience. We're going to do a sit down, formal, longer interview at the Soundplex in Pensacola, New Jersey, February 1st from 1 to 6 p.m. And Jodi's book is called Jekyll Can't Hyde. Where can they get that book? What's the best way to connect with you?
Yes, I think the best way right now is on Amazon. It's going to be on Barnes and Noble's online, I believe by tomorrow, and then it's going to
Great.
be in stores shortly as well. But yes, Amazon's the quickest way, and it's been flying off the shelves, which I'm really happy, and I've been getting a lot of positive feedback about it. So I'm
Great.
glad I'm helping others.
It's going to help a lot of people. It took a lot of courage.
Yep,
That's why I said that from the beginning, because I know there's
definitely.
fear around this. And then lastly, I just want to give a shout out to Cheryl from Media
Yes.
Friendly PR for connecting us and making this happen. This is great. This is where we can use social media for good. We can step away from a lot of the noise and hear
Yes.
stories from real people who have lived real things, like Jodi, going through these relationships and coming out on the
Absolutely.
other side and having a lot to teach and tell.
Yes.
Jodi, I want to thank you for carving out some time for us today. These links are up on YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn. They'll be up. You can go back. The links are the same. Share them with somebody who needs to hear this. We know people a lot of times struggle in silence with relationships. They question themselves. They think something's wrong with them. But maybe when you pick up Jodi's book, you hear this interview, it might start you to research on your own and start to figure out what's best for you. So Jodi, thank you so much again. Stay with me. Don't leave.
Okay.
And we'll see you real soon, everybody. I'll put the links in for the event on February 1st in the respective platform. And we want you to get a ticket. It's $25. It could be the best $25 you invest in 2025.
Yes.
So thank you so much, everybody. Have a great day.